Hello everyone, today I'm looking at Metal Gear 1. It's funny, I played this years ago on the Subsistence disc for Metal Gear Solid 3, which I got because, mainly for the camera angles and the whole 3D environment, which I thought was kind of necessary for that kind of game and how most people played it. But in Subsistence extra features, it of course has two extra games, Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, which were Kojima's original projects. So it is really interesting to go down history lane here and look at these classic games. And the main question we all have is, are they decent? Are they, half fun? And I would say for Metal Gear 1, yeah, it's actually not that bad. The story of Metal Gear 1 is pretty bare bones, though, and there's a lot of funny things that have been established in this game that would become series staples, despite them being maybe outdated for whatever reason. For example, the fact that the final boss of this game is just called the Big Boss, and that later just became a lore thing that they added to the universe, it just reeks of old school video game design, which is exactly what it is. In the game, you can basically use this is actually pretty interesting, is the same control scheme as Metal Gear Solid. So there's a lot of very funny similarities in a lot of ways. For example, it's always square button to shoot your weapon. You can still punch in this one using the circle button, and the L2 and R2 both do the sub weapon and sub item select, along with select being your codec call and start being, just a start menu. The one other big change, too, that I found funny is that while you do have rations in this game, you actually have to heal in the menu. It won't just automatically heal you if you have them equipped, which is an innovation of Metal Gear Solid. Another thing that's interesting is that, again, this is very bare bones, so the bullets in this game are literal pixels. They're basically dots on the screen. It's very, very old school. In the game, you get an array of weapons, actually. You get the pistol, which shoots, a bullet in one direction. You could then get the submachine gun, which is really fun because it sprays them all. Then there's a grenade launcher, a rocket launcher, and a remote missile launcher, which is basically the Nikita, and that's used to solve a lot of puzzles. It's really funny looking at this from a perspective as 2D Metal Gear Solid, because it feels more like a puzzle/dungeon game where you're just always figuring out the next thing. And while there is combat and there is sneaking around that is important, it's more so a series of getting certain items that allow you to beat a certain area and then going on to the next area. And that's technically also what Metal Gear Solid is, but it becomes a lot more obvious when you play this version of it. Again, I was surprised by how similar these two games really are, similar to Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time, for example, or Super Metroid and Metroid Prime. Of course, you can also find silencers so your gun doesn't make noise and alert the guards. Speaking of sound design, you'll get very, very bored of the main overall theme. It does not really change. It's very, very boring, and yeah. I will have to say, though, that the main combat music, when you get alerted, is actually quite a banger. It's actually very fun to listen to it. Aside from that, I guess the only other thing that's interesting is that the alert sound is completely different in this game. It's not the iconic alert sound that we've come to know and love. That's a Metal Gear Solid exclusive. Of course, the cardboard box, yes, is even still in this game, and you can use it to dodge security cameras and guards. It's how you have to get through certain places. Very specifically, there's a gas mask. I'd say this game more so resembles Metal Gear Solid than any of the other games. Just from the types of weapons. It's like the parachute, you have to jump off a thing, you have to fight a helipad. There's 4 types of bosses, just like the previous game, which have pretty ridiculous / very basic names like Shoot Gunman or something, and then Machine Gun Guy or Kid or something, and then the Flamethrower Guy. It's very, we just need to give this pixel guy a name, and it's very, very rudimentary. But yeah, the main scope and style of the game is you just kind of collect key cards, and those open the doors that allow you to proceed to the next area of the game. There are 3 different buildings similar to Metal Gear Solid, which has 2, and they're not separated by discs or anything, obviously, but it's a similar thing. One is a normal area, and the second one you can't really tell, but the third one is a desert-themed one, which is a little bit more interesting. Oh, and there's a tank boss, there's a helicopter boss. Again, just a lot of throwbacks, and there's not really a lot of strategy when it comes to the bosses. You just kind of kill them with whatever gun is the biggest, really, and then everything else is a puzzle in between to get to those parts. And so by the end of the game you have a level 8 key card, and what's interesting is that unlike Metal Gear Solid, you actually have to equip the key card to open doors. And I might be misremembering, I'm pretty sure in the Twin Snakes you don't have to do that. In the original Metal Gear Solid, I'm not sure you have to actually equip it. I'm pretty sure it's just an automatic upgrade. The other thing that's interesting too is that the item sub menus are actual menus. They don't just pop up as a UI thing on screen. They actually go to a menu, and there's no way to do like a quick unequip or something. They're just, part of that that whole new system and structure. Punching in this game is actually very effective compared to the other Metal Gear games, because it also stun locks the enemy, and it's a silent takedown. So it's actually a pretty useful tactic. And of course, there's even other characters in this game that are canon, like Gray Fox. He's in this, and Big Boss, obviously. What's really funny too is that the only part of this game that reeks of Metal Gear Solid 2 is that it turns out Big Boss has been orchestrating the entire operation, and he's been your commanding officer. That's the only big twist at the end. And it's really funny that they even changed the text where at the very end he's like, Snake, give up, turn off your MSX system, and in this one they actually edited to say PlayStation 2 system. So I really appreciate they made that little change. Oh, and of course there's a codec system in this, and you use that to call certain characters when you rescue POWs, and that's a large part of this game, rescuing POWs and find secret secret combinations or secret codec frequencies. You can use that to progress the story and contact certain people. Again, the game is very light on story, but playing this from a perspective of someone who's played the other games, it's interesting to see Big Boss still part of Foxhound, and then he's betraying Solid Snake essentially in the same breath. So it's interesting how they kind of develop that happening. Of course, for the sake of this game alone, it was just for the sake of convenience that, hey, there's a big boss and this is what he does. But on Snake's side, or rather from the perspective of Metal Gear Solid 3 in mind, this is kind of the turning point where Big Boss is still part of Foxhound, but he's betraying Solid Snake, and this is the first time he's coming in contact with that other clone. And then, meanwhile, I believe the second game also has him. But yeah. Overall, it's a fairly enjoyable game, all things considered. It's not amazing, it's not great, but it is playable, I would say, which is more than what I can say for other classic games of other series. And yeah, you might have to use a guide maybe a couple times, because it's very archaic in how you are supposed to get around and do things, but I'd say it's an interesting adventure into the old school style and the beginning of Metal Gear Solid. And I think the initial story was that you just have to infiltrate Outer Heaven, with Big Boss being, or whoever the terrorist leader, I think his name is like Schneider or something. So you have to just be sent in there by Foxhound and infiltrate and just do whatever. And so the story is very, very minimal. It doesn't give a geographic location or anything. But yeah, that's Metal Gear Solid. I'm sorry, that's Metal Gear 1. And pretty basic, pretty straightforward, but still interesting and worthwhile to play if you get the time. And it was very short too. It was like under 6 hours. So with all that being said, I'll see you later, guys. Bye.